This is an interview with Carol Linden for the Youngstown Historical Center of Industry and Labor Oral History Project titled Women at Work. The interview is being conducted at the Youngstown Historical Center of Industry and Labor, as known as the Steel Museum, on Thursday, February 9th, 2023. My name is Susan Lowry. Hi, welcome Carol. How are you today?
Hi. Good.
That's good. All right then. So we just have a couple of introduction questions that we like to ask our individuals. And the first one is, where did you and your family live when you were growing up?
I'm originally from Pittsburgh, and I moved to Ohio in 1976.
Okay. Was this for going to college, or were you still in high school, or where
I was married.
You were married?
My husband, that was my first husband. He got a job at Packard, and so this was close to home, so we moved here.
Okay. And then did you have any children?
I have 3 children.
Three,
Yes.
okay. And what did your parents do for a living?
My dad was in sales, and my mother, she was just a stay-at-home mom.
Okay. Where did you go to high school?
I went to Moon High School.
Moon High School.
By the Greater Pittsburgh Airport.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never heard of it. Well, being from here, yeah. And after high school, what did you do?
That's when I started, I went to college. I went to California State University in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I got my degree in speech pathology. And then when we moved to Ohio, I had my first job at Fairhaven Shelter Workshop as a language development specialist. And I started going back to college at Youngstown State University and got my master's in education.
Okay. So your first job was while you were in high school or out of high school?
My very first job, I was out of high school. I was in college.
Okay, what was it by chance?
I worked at the Greater Pittsburgh Airport in the sandwich shop. And this airport's no longer there. They tore the little one down. Now it's a big airport.
Okay, I see. A sandwich shop. That's great. So you went to college at California?
In California State in Pennsylvania.
Studying language.
Speech pathology and audiology.
And audiology. Then your first job from after you graduated with that degree, what was that?
That was in Lancaster at intermediate unit as a speech pathologist. I was working with parochial schools. I had one Amish school.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. What led you to go into that direction, the pathology, language pathology and stuff?
I wanted to be a regular teacher, an elementary teacher, but the field was getting so crowded, I decided I had to have a job. So I switched majors.
Okay. And schooling was your only education, or did you have to go and get any types of certificates?
After I got my master's, I was always learning and going back for workshops.
Okay.
But after my master's, the pay scale went up to master's plus, so many. And so I kept going back for those. But I just like learning. So.
Okay. Give me, when you were at Lancaster, give me like a typical day when you worked at that job.
That job, I had several schools, and I had certain days, certain schools. So I would go in, and they had to find a room for me to do the speech pathology. It was a pull out at that time. Today they're doing things different. They're doing a lot in the classroom, but mine was pull out. And then I'd work mostly speech problems. But as I got older and I got the master's, and I did more with language.
Okay. So you would go in, they would pull a student out of the class.
Yes, I'd go get the student, take him to this other room, and work on his goals.
And did you do that the whole entire time with different students, or
Yes.
just with one student the whole day?
Sometimes I had small groups, 2 or 3 students.
Okay. I'm looking at like maybe a job position or something, but it sounds to me as though that was your job. You were the only one doing it, so it wasn't like you were competing for a better position at all. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so it was just basically you going back to school just to better yourself, get more educated, learn. So yeah, Yeah, so no seniorities, no open positions. How about when you went back and you got your master's degree then in education, what was the first job that you received after that?
Well, I had been working at Fairhaven Children's Workshop, and that was my speech pathology degree. I was a language development specialist. My very first job was Youngstown City Schools. Well, I take that back. It was Trumbull County. It was somebody had gone on maternity leave, so I was filling in for supposedly a year out at Lordstown Elementary.
Oh, okay.
And these were children with multiple disabilities, and they were placed in the public schools because that was at the time frame where they were starting to integrate a little bit.
Okay.
So we were kind of isolated because we were actually under the Trumbull County Educational Service Center, and but we were in the public school with Lordstown.
When was that? Maybe early 80s, mid 80s? When was that?
That would have been in the early 80s.
Okay.
Around 1985.
Okay. Describe a typical day when you were doing that job then.
Well, we would work on we had different subjects to teach, but we did have a lot of students that had physical disabilities in that program. So we would have to do some of the physical therapy things that, the exercises they gave us. It was a kindergarten age group, kindergarten, first grade, so we had a nap time.
Okay.
But, to schedule, they would go into a gym class. We were integrated with the gym class and the music class and the art.
Okay.
So.
And what were some of those kind of challenges that you had with this? Like, was there challenges with the administration, the other teachers, the students, the parents? What kind of challenges did you face?
The administration was great out there at Lordstown, very supportive.
Okay.
I can't say that about all places, but there they were. Teachers tried to understand, so we were developing relationships with them because it was still fairly new. The biggest challenges would be that there was nobody in the immediate area to go to if you had questions to ask.
And no Google either.
Back then, no. We didn't have computers back then.
No, not like today.
No.
Right. So that is kind of what did you end up having to do if you didn't have anybody to talk to immediately? Did you have to write letters? Did you have to make phone calls?
Phone calls. We did have a supervisor that came out, but it did make it difficult because you kind of had to figure out a lot of stuff to do on your own.
Wow.
And I did have an assistant, so between us, and there was another teacher, so there were two teachers and two assistants, so we would try to figure it out between us.
Wow. Oh man. What kind of hours? It's regular Monday through Friday.
Yes.
As any teacher, and then you get your holidays off. What was the working relationship then with your coworkers? So like the other teachers, did any of them ever single you out, or were they mostly supportive? And maybe not even just at Lordstown. How about some of the other school districts as you started to grow in this area with the specially challenged?
Like anywhere else, some were supportive, some would help you, and then there were others that did not, that would try to go behind your back and cause you problems.
Oh,
and
dear.
That's been everywhere I've been. You have a mixture, even in regular workplaces.
Yeah,
it's pretty similar.
Yeah. Let's talk about then some of the strikes that school districts would have. When you started at Lordstown, was there one right off the bat that you?
Not Lordstown.
Not no. Lordstown,
no.
Though. Okay.
My very first strike, I want to say it was probably in the early 80s because my daughter had been born. That's when I was at Fairhaven Children's Workshop. And of course, your very first strike, you're very excited. I was young, and it was thrilling because we never did that before.
Okay.
And we had to do it in the wintertime, which was bad. It was very cold that winter. And I did have Emily. She was really young, so I had to take her to the sitters. And luckily, my sitter was right near where Fairhaven was. But that was a pretty long strike. And then we had some gentlemen that did work, like big unions, AFL-CIO. They wanted to throw tax down on the ground. So they had to back off. They limited our striking at the entrances and things.
Okay.
But that one lasted a couple weeks.
Okay.
That was my very first one.
Yeah.
And then I went to Youngstown City Schools,
Okay.
The very first year I started, it was a really long strike, and we had to go 2 Saturdays to make it up. I think that one lasted a couple weeks. And it seemed like every 3 years for a long time we were having strikes. One strike, we almost didn't know whether we would be able to complete a school year. They had to bring in trafficant to settle it.
Oh, wow. What did, I want you to tell the story of where the one individual asked you to bring your children.
Oh, yeah, she was an assistant principal, and she had been in the system, but she was new to be an assistant principal, and that's when I first started in Youngstown. And she told me, we had talked, and she said, you should have brought your kids across the picket line so you could have learned how things were done in Youngstown. But my first principal there was Sam Trafficant. I was getting pink notices. He gave you pink notices for everything. If you didn't send in a log of hall passes, or he wanted all this paperwork.
Okay, so I'm a little younger. I know Jim Trafficant.
This is his brother.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you had to respect the man, but he was tough.
Yeah. Did you think he was fair?
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some things were a little petty, like.
I don't think he understood the students. The students that I worked with were students with multiple disabilities, and they were fairly new at that time into the buildings, because once again they were from a separate school and they started integrating them into the regular buildings. And so we were kind of tucked away. There were old shop rooms in the bottom level, the first level of the school. They didn't know where to put the kids.
Yeah.
And they were, I don't know if there was a fear, because they just didn't understand. And I don't think he really understood. He didn't want them in the building.
Yeah, no, that actually makes sense. You know, when you are introduced to something that they want to start out and be new, everybody has those hesitations and fears of how it's going to work out. Do you think that as you kept moving forward that himself or people like him were able to finally grasp what's going on and see how beneficial it was to have you in that job?
Yes, the principal that told me that I should have crossed the picket line.
Yeah.
At the very end of that year, she came down and gave the kids gifts and everything.
Aww.
She started to understand, because my group was multiple disabilities, but on either side of my classrooms, the other 2 classrooms that were special needs were behavioral students. So that was a little different. I had behaviors, but I had some other issues to deal with.
So when you say behaviors, though, you're talking about maybe them acting out.
Yes.
Maybe even a bit violent.
Yes.
Wow, that's scary. Were you ever in a position where you interceded an episode?
I had a student once that, unfortunately, he had gotten involved with some drugs, and he became very violent, and we had to call the police.
High school age or younger?
Yes, high school. He was 9th grade.
Oh, wow. That's unfortunate, but yeah.
But that year I think I learned more than what I taught them.
Wow.
Because working inner city is a little different than your suburbs, and I really didn't have that experience before.
Well, then when I think of myself, sometimes I would more go towards something that would be more comfortable, something I knew, where you didn't. You went to inner city schools, which is really tough. Was there something that said that you needed to do this, you wanted to do this, or was it somebody who encouraged you?
Well, I had gone through a divorce, so I had 3 little kids at home, and I needed to have a job.
Oh.
They didn't pick me up over at Lordstown. That was the fill-in position, because I think at that time they weren't hiring people with masters because we cost more. So I had applied several different places, almost got a job at one place, but they said if they found anybody with a bachelor's, they'd hire them first. So Youngstown, I really didn't want to go there at first. First of all, because it was almost an hour away from where I was living. I was living in Bristolville at the time. And so I waited till last minute. I signed the contract last minute.
Yeah.
But I've got to tell you, it was the best years of my life working in the city. It really was.
With all the ups and downs.
Yes.
The strikes, the trials of, How about with the parents? You just mentioned about the students and how some of them had even gotten violent, but the parents, how were they? Were they easy to work with? Did they?
Not the parent, not really.
No.
Some were, but some of the parents had special needs, like the kids. Others didn't. I myself didn't have any problems where they came in and threatened me. Other regular ed teachers did.
Why would they threaten you?
Because their children probably weren't doing the work and they were getting bad grades.
And they were blaming
you? They were
blaming,
not me, but the other teachers.
Okay.
I never had that experience.
Oh, okay.
But I think the parents a lot of times took it for granted, and they felt it was my job to do a lot of the upbringing of the kids.
Right.
A lot of things that they didn't tell you, like students with, if they did things at home. Like it was hard sometimes to get a homeschool program for any kind of. My kids had some behaviors. They didn't have behavioral handicaps, but they did have behaviors like any other regular kid does. And to work out a program where we would work homeschool was kind of difficult.
Yeah. How about your children at home then? So you're divorced. You have three young kids. How was that a challenge?
Well, I remarried and I gained 4 kids, so we had 7 in the house.
Oh, man.
So,
that happens.
Yeah. So
the Brady Bunch.
There were 7. We had them for a couple of years, and then the 2 older boys went with their mother. So then we were down to 5.
Okay.
But
so that kind of helped balance.
Actually, having the more kids was easier than having less
right?
children. Yeah, I had to be organized. I mean, I had places for things so that I could keep everything in order to go to work. And being a teacher, that was the best job ever because I was off when they were off. And the schedules of the school, like the beginning, starting, end dates, were closer. Today, they're all different. Each district has their own. Back then, they were pretty close.
Yeah.
So things have changed so much now. Like I didn't have a lot of meetings. We had once-a-month meetings that they didn't last that long. But the teachers today have a lot of meetings, and their child care situation would be a lot more difficult than mine was.
I see. Okay. So your children didn't regret you being a school teacher. They didn't feel left out or anything like that. You know what I'm saying?
No, I took them to school. This was before Take Your Child to School Day. I took them to school so they could see the children I worked with.
Yeah, these questions, they do kind of are more of a generalization because some parents, some women, it was a challenge because of the type of job they have. But yeah, you're right. I do understand. You got blessed being a school teacher in that regard.
Yes,
I understand.
Very much so. But today you couldn't do what I did even because you couldn't take your kids. You'd have to give special permission with all of the security issues. Our school was more an open door policy back then.
Yeah.
Parents could come in. You didn't need to have all this, safety like you did. Even though, because for us, the school was the safe place for the kids. You weren't having all the problems. So, but today, it's more of a challenge today than what I had.
Yeah, I'm hearing the dynamic, the different levels from when you started out to right now. And you retired in 2019, so you did get to witness then some of the changes that had to be implemented in the school buildings because of the changing times.
Yeah, I was back in the day when even you had to have, when they were bringing the kids in and they fell under, first it was they entered the Department of Ed for the special needs kids because they had all separate schools at one time. Oh. And I was in that time frame when there were separate schools. And then they integrated them in, and the teachers that had been teaching had to get Department of Ed. They had to make sure they had the right credentials. Like I had to go back to get credentials when I was at the workshop. And then they fully integrated the Department of Ed. Okay. So yeah, there were tons of changes.
Yeah.
But my biggest problem throughout all those years was there was no materials to teach the kids with. And I taught mainly at middle school level.
Okay.
So I had to make my own materials. I had no books. I had file cabinets at home. made my own lessons. I made my own curriculum. And you know what? Even though it sounds like a big job, the fact that I was able to do that gave me, I could teach what I wanted to teach. What I thought the kids needed. Whereas today it's a lot different. They tell you what to teach. You've got that curriculum, and they want them to follow along close to the regular education curriculum.
Okay.
And for the kids that I worked with, they needed so much more than that.
Oh, that's
I felt like today they're not getting what their needs met, their basic needs to survive.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's making me think about, is there a way to make that change? You know, is there like some sort of advocate to go and say, hey, wait, we got to change this a little bit? Or is it just the standard and that's what you got to go with?
Right now, it's how this came about because they wanted exposure to regular curriculum. And I can understand the parents' point of view. When they first started doing this, I was able to put in, like in those areas, things that the kids need. For instance, under, health maybe, I could put in cooking and things, you know, so I could work with helping them to learn to cook, what was healthy to eat. I could put in physical activity. I could put things in there. Now they tell you pretty much what to do. And a lot of it doesn't make sense to me. I had students that didn't know where they lived. Mm-hmm. And yet you're working on them learning the countries, the states. They don't know they live in Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
So it didn't make sense to teach all that because it wasn't relevant to them. And a lot of the curriculum isn't relative to them, but that's what the regular ed's teaching.
I get it. Yeah, that is, that's challenging.
But I do see the need to have them sit in the regular classes when they can. Like if you're doing science experiments, have them sit in. They will gain something, if nothing else, social skills.
Oh yeah,
you know, so,
that's true.
But they need to also learn important things to them.
Were you able to do like field trips?
I did a lot of community training. We were out in the community all the time because a lot of times the kids never got experiences. Some of the kids never even ate at a fast restaurant. The parents would buy the fast food, bring it home.
Oh,
or they didn't go shopping even for their shoes. So we would take them out. I felt that that's what they needed. And then they would get that connection. You need connections to know what you're talking about. They didn't have that visualization of the things.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. So did you get along with, for the most part, with the children throughout the years?
I love the children. I love them.
Would you say that might even been a little bit the best part of your job is working with the kids? Or
Oh, that was the best part, yes. If I had any problems, it was more with administration.
That was going to be my next question is like what would be the least enjoyable thing about your job?
It would be when they came in. A lot of them didn't understand. They didn't really know the reasoning. I had reasons why I did what I did.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain it, but the awareness wasn't there.
Yeah.
And of course they have so much more on their mind too to take care of.
That's true. That's true. So yeah, you worked in a job that was very much women oriented. But being a woman, was there any kind of challenges that you faced? Maybe, you brought up about Sam Trafficant. Was there maybe, not just him, but anybody else that maybe saw you as a lesser person because of you being a woman, or did you not really see that at all because of the job description you did have?
No, I think we did have men because it was a middle school, but
okay.
If anything, the men would have more freedom than the women. Yeah, there was a little bit of there was still that going on. Not so much as what used to be, I'm sure, but a little bit.
Okay. Would you be able to kind of define that a little bit more at all? Like, I'm thinking even if it's just one experience or one.
Well, when the principal wasn't out, when he wasn't in the building, he would put a man in charge.
Okay.
It wasn't until probably in the 90s that we even had in our building a woman principal. It was always two males.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good example. Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other questions. I am so sorry. Because again, these, the questions kind of fall in line with a lot of the steel workers and also industry. So like some of these questions are like, okay, women's locker room. So we don't want to talk about that. But there is another topic that I am seeing. How about the pay rate? Was there any gaps between you and maybe the male teachers, or was it about even across the board?
Well, this is the joy of a union.
Yes.
Had a salary schedule, and we had steps with the salary schedule, and we got equal pay.
Okay.
However, the males had more opportunity to maybe do extra things, like sports.
Okay.
There were females that did it, but it was more males, and then they would get more money, the extracurricular activities.
Ah, okay. So say you have the men's basketball and women's basketball. You have a male coach and a female coach. So are you saying that the male coach would actually earn more money than the female coach?
No.
Okay.
No, but then you have the basketball, but the males would have more opportunity. There'd be other things they could do.
Okay, I see
more
what you're
so
saying.
than the women as far as things.
Okay, I'm glad I clarified that because, yeah. And then you went ahead and retired in 2019, like we said, right?
Yes.
So because of the union and because of, you had like a pension or something like that, or
Yes.
Social Security even?
Oh, it cannot get Social Security. The Windfall Act eliminated that. They're working to get it back.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
it's kind of, it's not so good because in a lot of cases, if the woman's married to somebody that's on Social Security and you're a teacher, they subtract what your pension is off of their Social Security, and most of the time ours is a little more because it includes more, and so I won't get it unless they change that. And it has affected some of the teachers in the past when their spouse passed away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, puts them on a whole different level.
Oh, that's a shame. So my last question then would be if there was anything else that you would like to add in regarding your working life, maybe even home life, maybe something more about the strikes, or even like as you were studying and keep going back to get your further education, was there anything else that like really stood out to you as something pivotal in your life?
I will say that we had a really nice program. After I retired from the teaching, I was still in the system, and I went back and job coached. Mm-hmm. And those were students that I had taught previously, and some that I didn't, but they were still students with multiple disabilities. And we were a lot of different places, like Big Lots and St. E's and the Holiday Inn in Boardman and Mark's, all over the place, doing jobs, working with the kids. Okay. Well, it was a good PR program and very much successful. And I don't know the reason, but they shut the program down. But that to me was one of the best programs they ever had, because the students that I worked with, that met their needs. Mm-hmm. They were learning what they needed to do to survive.
Right.
And
okay.
It was just sad that they closed that down. But Youngstown, for me, it was the best years of my life, but all but 1 year I had to fight. They would either put too many kids, because there were limitations on how many kids in the class. And even at the end, when I was assistant in the classroom, they were putting students in there that were higher functioning cognitively than should have been in there, with behavioral issues, with ones that didn't have, mm-hmm. that needed more help. And it was not a good thing. So I would try to fight every year to get what was right for those kids.
Right. In a situation like that, what was that typical day for you to try and...
Oh, it was rearranging seats, redirecting. It was rough. And throughout the years, Well, we never really got a lot of administrative support as far as if you had behavioral issues. But near the end there, I wasn't the teacher, but they really did not help at all. And it was hard because the kids, there were so many, and they were picking on the other kids. And there was a lot of that going on, and there was nothing that could be done in a lot of cases.
When you would say that some had more cognitive. So did it feel as though you were teaching two separate classes?
We had more. It was probably 3 levels. It was a lot.
So here you would teach one thing, over here we would teach a different thing, but try and being cohesive all at the same time.
The problem would be the behaviors would interfere with all the learning. It's hard enough when you have the different levels because you're teaching every student's, they're all different. So you're trying to get it all in with all the different levels and all the different, handicap and conditions that they have with their strengths to try to teach them. And with the behaviors, the whole class, that was it. You weren't able to teach, you had to deal with behaviors. And so that was going on at the very end those last couple years. And that's when they had the report card and Youngstown wasn't doing so good and they were cited for different things. And I know that sending kids home is not the answer. But I think we do need to come up with a better way of dealing with a lot of the discipline issues.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry. Yeah, I think we did. We kind of touched on everything that I have listed here, and you did share an extra bit of information. So yeah, I thank you very much. I guess I kind of wish that there was more. I'm like, oh my.
Yes, I had the best of times in my
that's
teaching
great.
career.
No, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just was like, oh, okay. But I thank you so much, Carol, for being here. Thank you for being patient with me, too.
Thank you.
You know your job. All right. Let me turn this off over here.